Every single day, leaders are making these massive bets on the future of their companies. We're talking new products, huge marketing campaigns, entire strategic pivots. These are really high stakes decisions that can literally make or break a business. For decades, a lot of these bets were placed on experience, on intuition, what we all call gut feel. But let's be honest, in a world that's just swimming in data, relying on instinct alone is one of the biggest and most hidden dangers in business. So, how do we get from these high stakes guesses to decisions that are backed by real evidence? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into right now. So let me just ask you this straight up. When it comes to the crunch, when you have to make that critical call, are you operating on solid evidence, or are you kind of just making a really well-educated and, let's face it, very expensive guess? It's a tough question, but it's so important because the gap between a guess and a data-backed conclusion, that's where companies either win or get left behind. And this gets us to the real villain of our story, the unchecked assumption. It's that silent belief that's hiding behind almost every major strategic move. It's the, oh, we're pretty sure customers want this, or we assume this new market is ready for us. And if that assumption was wrong, well, it can be an absolute disaster. And this slide just lays it out so perfectly, right? The old way versus the new way. An assumption, that's a total leap of faith. Think of a company just assuming their new app is going to be a smash hit. They might pour a year of work and $1 million into building it, only to launch and crickets. Nobody wants it. That is a slow, painful, and super expensive lesson. But a hypothesis? That's different. That's a question you ask your data. It's designed to be tested. It's like saying, we believe users will pay for a feature that does this. You can test that idea with a simple landing page in like a week for a tiny fraction of the cost. I mean, really think about it. Are you launching a new feature? You're assuming people will actually pay for it. Moving into a new market, you're assuming there's enough demand there to make it worthwhile. Look, the problem isn't having assumptions. Of course we have them. We're human. The real problem is betting the farm on them without even trying to see if they're true first. Okay, so if these unchecked assumptions are the bad guy, who's the hero, right? What's going to save the day? Well, it's a structured approach that basically arms us against these risky guesses and gives us a reliable way to find real answers in our data. And that hero, it's called hypothesis testing. Now, I know, that sounds super technical, maybe a little scary, but don't let the name fool you. All it really means is having a formal way to ask your data, hey, is this idea actually any good, before you go all in? It's all about checking if a change is likely to work before you commit. And check this out. It boils down to a super simple 4-step process. First, you state your hypothesis. You take that gut feeling and you turn it into a clear, testable statement. Second, you test it. You run a controlled experiment, could be something as simple as an A/B test on your website. Third, you analyze. You just step back and look at what the real-world data is telling you. And finally, you decide. You make your call, not based on a wing and a prayer, but with a confidence that comes from having actual evidence. You see, building this kind of thinking into your company, it's about way more than just one-off decisions. It's about creating a culture where you're always learning and always improving. Like the slide says, decisions informed by data rather than assumptions ultimately drive organizational success. That's how you build a culture of accountability and transparency, where the best ideas win because the data says so, not just because of who has the loudest voice in the room. Okay, but hold on. If this is so great, so powerful, why isn't everyone doing it all the time for every single decision? Well, that's because in the real world, there's often this resistance to slowing down and actually testing things. Man, you hear this stuff all the time, right? We've got to move fast. We don't have time to run a test. Or, it's just too expensive and complicated to set up. And here's a big one, simple overconfidence. Hey, I've been in this industry for 20 years. I know what our customers want. And look, the people saying this aren't trying to be difficult. They're just falling into some really common mental traps. But wow, this chart right here, it just puts all those excuses into perspective, doesn't it? Just look at that tiny little sliver on the left. That's the cost of testing. Now look at the giant bar on the right. That's the potential cost when an untested idea completely bombs. We are talking about the difference between a small investment upfront versus a potential financial disaster down the line. The real risk isn't taking the time to test. The real risk is betting your whole company on a guess. But here's the good news. We are living in an era where all those barriers we just talked about, time, cost, complexity, they're being absolutely crushed by technology. And the real game changer here is artificial intelligence. It's becoming this amazing co-pilot for anyone who has to make big decisions. So first up, let's talk about predictive analytics. These AI tools can dig through mountains of your old data to actually forecast what's likely to happen in the future. It's kind of like having a crystal ball that's actually based on real data, showing you the probable impact of your decision before you even pull the trigger. It helps you spot risks you might have completely missed otherwise. And then you've got this other powerhouse, automated A/B testing. Instead of spending ages setting up one little test, these platforms let you rapidly test dozens, even hundreds of variations all at the same time. I mean, imagine trying to test 10 different headlines, 20 button colors, and 5 different images all at once to see what works best. AI can handle all that complexity and tell you the winning combination, something that is basically impossible for a person to do manually. And this, right here, is where the sheer scale of AI just completely changes the game. It can run thousands of possible scenarios before you ever commit a single dollar to the real world. It turns what could have been months of painstaking human analysis into just minutes of computer time. That old excuse of, we just don't have the time, yeah, that's starting to disappear fast. So when you put all this together, what do you get? Well, it's not just about having better spreadsheets or fancier charts. It's about a fundamental shift in how we lead. It's a whole new standard for making decisions that are smarter, faster, and believe it or not, even fairer. Let's actually break that down. What does that AI-powered advantage really look like? Well, your decisions get smarter because they're based on cold, hard evidence, not just the emotions or opinions in the room. They're way faster because AI just turbocharges that whole testing process. And they're fairer because data acts as a check against all those sneaky human biases that can cloud our judgment. It all leads to a more transparent, more accountable culture where the best ideas win. Period. And that point about bias, it is huge. Some studies suggest that using these kinds of data-driven AI tools can slash decision bias by as much as 85%. Think about that. 85%. We're not talking about replacing people here. Not at all. We're talking about giving them superpowers, augmenting their judgment so they can be as objective and clear-eyed as possible. And that brings us right back to the beginning, full circle. The tools to move beyond just guessing are here. They are more accessible, more powerful, and easier to use than they have ever been before. In this new reality, the only question leaders really need to ask themselves is this: with all this at our fingertips, why on earth would you ever choose to guess again?